A psychedelic state is some state of mind where you see colors, mixing of your senses, and then you can get an out-of-body experience, ego dissolution. It creates a window of opportunity, and during that state, the brain can change and be modeled. We call it plasticity.
Dr. Mikael Palner is an associate professor and neuroscientist who studies exactly what psychedelics do inside the brain. He earned his PhD in neuroscience from the University of Copenhagen and completed a postdoctoral fellowship at Stanford University. He now leads the preclinical imaging core facility at the University of Southern Denmark.
Using PET-MR brain scans, he studies how psilocybin and DMT reshape anxiety, mood, and neural plasticity, the very mechanisms that allow the mind to be rewired.
And whatever you think about, you can do lasting changes. Something will arise, may be true, but also maybe not true.
Thank you so much for coming in, Michael.
Yeah, welcome. I'm very happy to be here.
What's the most surprising thing that you learned in your research about psychedelics that's going to be blowing people's mind?
I think the most surprising thing is the workings of DMT and ayahuasca. That is, it seems to be slightly different from LSD and psilocybin.
In what way?
In the way that it targets receptors in the brain. So it has a different pharmacological profile, if you can say it like that. Without getting into very detailed knowledge, then yeah, it is a bit different from the other ones.
Okay. That we're going to go deeper in later, because that I really want to understand. When I did the research, I was trying to understand the difference from the different psychedelics, so that's going to be one of the things later. But Steve Jobs credited LSD as one of the main things for his creativity, or how Apple became what it was. And several other elites have been doing that. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, I think that during their upbringings in California and in the San Francisco area, psychedelics were on a boom, right, in the 60s and 70s. And that has created an environment where people talk with each other and creativity flows, and he has been around artists and stuff like that. So that might contribute to the whole thing, that he has been in this kind of environment. I don't know if it's only LSD that is causing it, but I think the whole environment of where he is and the people he hang out with as a young person, and the whole vibe is in California is about that creativity and startup business, right?
But how come, so LSD and psychedelics has been out for several years, and now there's a strong renaissance, there's much more research in it, and it's like a lot of the elites in California are taking some kind of microdosing. Why is it that now it's become so popular again?
Yeah, I think it's been out of the main public interest, but in the sub groups of life, like in the rave culture and in other people's, it's still been present, and LSD has still been used in recreative use, right? And also in underground therapy sessions. But it's blossomed up because it's been starting to gain popularity, and there's been some clinical studies that have shown that it can be used together with therapy for treating a range of different mental health disorders. And that, of course, has boosted the public media interest, and then it has surfaced to the ground, and so to speak, and people get to know about it.
Why has it been out for so many years? Like there was...
The main reason has been that it's been illegal, and research in it has been stopped because it's been scheduled in the US, and then in many parts of the world that follow the same category of scheduling of drugs. And when it gets illegal in the US, it's actually illegal to do research on it. So it's not easy to do research on LSD and psilocybin in the US. And US being the biggest market for research, it's a huge thing when you can't do research on some drugs.
Yeah.
But then, of course, in Switzerland, it's been much easier. And that's also where some of the resurfacing clinical studies were first done. That was out of Switzerland. If you go back in the day, there was a lot of not so good research done in Denmark, in particularly, but also in Switzerland. And everybody has seen some of the videos from the CIA in the 60s and 70s where they used LSD as well. And that kind of research maybe not have been up to the standards of today. So then it crashed and created a silence in the field.
For someone that doesn't know, like, what kind of bad research was done?
In Frederiksberg, they tried to treat mental health disorders, but the setting around the psychedelics wasn't so good. So they took in their patients, they gave them a drug, didn't tell about it, didn't tell what it did, locked them in the basement, and tell them to just ring the bell if you need help, and then left them alone in the basement. And for an out-of-body experience where you get hallucinations and you get, with high doses, you get anxiety if you don't know what's happening to you, then that must have been an extremely frightening situation to be in.
That's not the experiment you want to join.
That's not, I wouldn't like to try that, no. And it's definitely not how it's going on today.
No.
Yeah.
So where is it most effective? PTSD, anxiety, depression?
I think that's up to, still up for grasps. We don't know where it's most effective. The biggest amount of research that have been done has been on major depressive disorder, where it seems to be very fast working as an antidepressant, and then on anxiety disorders, including PTSD, where it also seems to be very efficient in this fear extinction or anxiety extinction part of the therapy, where you meet your fear and talk about it, and then over and over again, and then it slowly goes away. So in that phase of the therapy, it seems to be very effective.
And if we're going deeper, like, explain, what is psychedelics?
Psychedelic is a broad term of words for a compound that induces a psychedelic state. And a psychedelic state is some state of mind where you see colors, hear colors, and mixing of your senses. And then you can get an out-of-body experience, so a feeling of not being yourself and looking into yourself, called ego dissolution. Mm-hmm. And with increasing doses, this is more and more likely to happen. At lower doses, probably not. But it is this change of mind that is happening. And different from other kinds of drugs, like ketamine doesn't give you a psychedelic experience per se, in the same way as LSD does. And the same thing with MDMA, for example, also doesn't give you a psychedelic experience. But other drugs could, like salvinorin A is another drug that can induce psychedelic experiences.
So I've been facilitating a lot of breathwork where there's been brain scans and some of it that should be similar to psychedelic experiences.
Yes.
Can that be, and I've had many people that have been taking psychedelics and so on that came and told me afterwards they felt like they were tripping. Mm-hmm. Could that be defined as a psychedelic experience, or it have to be you ingest something?
No. I mean, a psychedelic experience can be many things. It doesn't have to be related to the drugs. It's just an out of mind and out of body experience. And breathwork is actually one part where there's still research missing, but there's some research that say that you would actually release DMT in your own brain. And DMT, being a psychedelic compound, also creates a psychedelic experience. Yeah. Very short-lived. But that could be one of the reasons for breathwork to induce a psychedelic experience. Yeah. We still don't completely know, but it is one of the theories. Yeah.
That's also what I always say, like, it's emergent science. Mm-hmm. It's not like something we can say fully stable that we completely agree on, that is DMT release or some of these other things, but that we're still in the early stages. But it's super fascinating that you can do so much with breathwork and the stories that you hear afterwards.
Oh, but it's super important just in the controlling stress and anxiety with breathing it's so important. So that is one of the first things you need to do if you feel anxiety creeping up. It's control your breathing.
Yeah. But can you tell me more about, so this DMT, mm-hmm. There's mushrooms, there is ketamine, there's ayahuasca. Like, can we kind of categorize the different things? I tried to do some research before, and I had good conversations with my friend Chad, and try to understand, like, what is the difference on the different compounds that you get, and also how they affect the brain.
Yeah, in general, we look at the psychedelics in different categories, and the ones that some people call classic or serotonergic psychedelics are drugs that work on serotonergic receptors in the brain, and serotonin being a neurotransmitter in the brain. They work through the same system. And that is kind of three classes. That's tryptamines, which is DMT and psilocybin, and 5-MeO-DMT belongs to a class of chemical compounds called tryptamines.
And psilocybin is mushrooms.
Psilocybin is the active compound in
Magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's one category.
That's one category.
Yeah.
And DMT and is the compound coming from ayahuasca, and 5-MeO-DMT is the one that comes from the toad in the Brazil forest.
Yeah.
So these compounds are very related, and they look almost the same when you look at them structurally and chemically.
And what about MDMA?
Then, we'll take LSD and mescaline first, because those are the two of the other compounds. So LSD is an ergoline. It's a much bigger compound than the other ones, but it has some structural similarities, and it comes from it's synthetic, but it has a relative called LSA that comes from a fungus growing on yeast or corn. So an ergoline fungus. So that's LSD, and then you have mescaline, which comes from cactus, peyotes, and San Pedro cactus, which is a phenethylamine, and it's a different structure of compounds. Again, it looks much more like dopamine than serotonin, but it works on the serotonin receptors as well. So those are the three groups of compounds.
And what about, I don't remember the name now, but there's the frog poison.
That's the 5-MeO-DMT that is coming from the frog or the toad.
Yeah.
And then you have MDMA, which is a different compound all by itself. It works in a different way, and it's not a psychedelic compound and belongs to another group. And then you have ketamine, which is also not a psychedelic compound in my view, at least, and works by a different way as well and has a different structure as well.
Does it alter the brain permanently? And I guess there's a difference on which group you take?
Yes.
Or is it just a short term and then there's the experience that you get from it? And I've kind of heard that it connects different things in the brain that I imagine would be longer term. But can you explain a little bit more about like...
Yeah, so if we just look at the serotonergic psychedelics...
Yeah. And can you mention quickly then which one was that?
That is DMT, psilocybin from mushrooms, LSD, and mescaline from the cactus. Mescaline isn't that studied that much because it should be a very, very long trip and not that pleasant compared to the other ones. I think psilocybin is probably the most studied, and LSD. But yes, it seems like that it does something to your brain that is actually long-lasting.
And when we say long-lasting, a week, a month, years potentially, or lifetime?
I think, and because we don't know exactly how it is, I think it creates an window of opportunity. So it induces a state in your brain that is similar to a state of, it's easier to learn something and it's easier to change habits and whatever in your brain. And during that state, the brain can change and be modeled. We call it plasticity.
Yes.
So it increases the plasticity of the brain, and this can probably lasts for a few days to a week or something like that.
Okay.
And in that state, it is what you do with your brain that helps it create long-lasting effects. That at least how I see it. So you need to do your change in the weeks after. You need to think, and whatever you think about, you can do lasting changes.
Okay, so if I understand it correct, you have the window that you open up, which is not only when you're like feeling all the emotions, but let's say a week after, I know like it's give and take. Yeah. And what you do there is like how you can change the way that you look at the view easier if you reinforce it. So kind of like if you do the training there of looking at the positive in the world or looking more creatively or something else, then you have a possibility to kind of lock that down a little bit more. Would that be a correct way of understanding?
Yes, or changing your habit from something to another thing. Not only good though. I always think about the experiment that could potentially prove it, but I don't think it's ethical. But if you really want to be a good smoker, I think you should start smoking right after you had a psychedelic trip, and then you would probably be more addicted, and you will be much more addicted to the smoking than if you didn't have the psychedelic trip before. At least that's how I think about it in the bad way as well. Yeah. And it's not that strange actually to think that something can go up and give you a change in your brain that lasts a long time, because you have traumatic incidences from one traumatic incident as a soldier can create a lasting memory for the rest of your life that you have problems with, right? So the brain can do this. We know it from traumatic events, and here you have the possibility to reverse it or do a positive event in your brain instead.
Okay, but that kind of leads into one of my next questions. Is I hear so many positive experiences, people that change their life, and many people say like, yeah, but it's not addictive. There's no side effects and blah blah blah. Is that true?
There's definitely more sides to that story.
Yeah.
Addiction, we can kind of put it into two groups, right? You can have the physical addiction. So if you're addicted to opioids, you can't stop taking them because then you will die, and you get a physical reaction. Psychedelics doesn't induce an addiction like this. Then you have the mental addiction of like you want to have a little bit of red wine on Friday. You're not addicted to alcohol, but that's what you do, or your coffee or something, which is also slightly addictive, but it's more like this rhythm or habit that you do.
Emotional addiction.
Yes. I see that it can be like that. Many people who do one psychedelic trip want to do it again, but they probably don't want to do it again within the next few weeks. It's a big experience, so they maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years, they do it again. And if you need it, then feel free. But I also think you should maybe think about it if you really need it or you don't need it.
Because that's also what I see is some of these people like, yeah, you cannot get addicted. It's like, okay, I buy the like physical addiction as you just said.
Yes.
But it's like, when is the last time you were not on a microdose or something? And they're like, yeah, but I can easily stop. I was like, okay, but that's the same that everyone that's addicted says. Yes. I'm not addicted to it. I can easily stop, but I don't need to stop. Yeah. Which I believe then is like more the emotional addiction. Another guy that did ayahuasca, I think he's been on, and I might be wrong, but it was something like 47 ayahuasca trips. And I was like, holy F, I've never heard anyone do that many. I was like, why that many? And then he like, I'm a slow learner. I was like, no, you're not. And like, you are hyper intelligent. So that's not the case. So I guess there's still the danger of the emotional addiction to being like, this is something that I need. And for some people, yes, it can be a way of escaping.
It can. I think that's very true. A way of escaping is probably a very good way to put it. Yeah. And especially with microdosing, there's no. So if we buy into the context that psychedelics, microdosing, and high doses induces this state of plasticity, this is not a state you want to be in for the rest of your life. Because that would be like being a teenager all the time with your brain. You also need to log in at some point and create those memories and create a rhythm. Because as I said, with the smoking experiments, you can also have the possibility of having a traumatic event while your brain is very plastic, and then you would have learning of the traumatic experience would probably be worse than if you didn't have this plasticity event. Yeah. So I definitely would range to the easy side of don't do 47 ayahuasca trips. That yes, would be a little bit too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, fair. And then you see, I've seen these people that was in the party scene doing cocaine earlier. Mm-hmm. Now they're doing mushrooms very often, but now they're spiritual. So they no longer have an addiction problem. They just became spiritual and connected to the world. What do you think about that connection?
At least it's two very different drugs. But it's still, yeah, you have a physical addiction. You see the same thing often I see it in longevity research where people go from being addicted to smoking and being obese, and then they go in and now they're addicted to exercise and taking 47 different types of drugs to live 1 year longer in the end. So that's also kind of an addiction, right? I think it's just you want to have something that's like fulfilling your life, and that this is me, and now I identify with somebody who is doing mushrooms all the time or whatever. But
I've also met people where I was like, wow. I remember running into a friend who was like, what happened to you? You seem much more balanced. Like, you just like, yeah, everything looks better. And he was like, yeah, microdosing. I was like, okay, it really worked for you. Mm-hmm. So what's the thing? How is it being used in a positive manner? Now we talked a bit about the dangers and that the kind of label of just saying like, there's no way you can get addicted to it. There's no side effects and so on. We kind of understand that the brain opens up. It can both be in a good or a bad way, and you can get the emotional kind of addiction. But what are some of the positive things about these psychedelics, both from a performance perspective and...
Just quickly touching on the last part of side effects, there is a lot of other side effects, just mental health generally, and blood pressure increases and heart rate changes, and there's a lot of things we don't know, especially with microdosing, where you take it over a long time.
Let's go into them, and then we can get the positive side afterwards. So the one sitting and waiting, like, what can I do? But just so we understand the labels first.
Yeah, because this haven't been through all the toxicity testing that we normally do with pharmacological drugs when they go out and get into the market. And especially, there's a big difference in taking a compound once, like taking one trip of ayahuasca probably doesn't have a big side effect profile. But if you take this drug and then now spread it out and take it for 2 years, every second day or something like that, then it's a whole different thing, because you will start to have this constant plasticity, constant increase of cellular growth or whatever it does in the brain, and that can create different kinds of side effects that we don't know of yet. So, but with that said, there might be positive benefits to it as well. I think it's different from high doses once. Might have good benefits on, I mean, you get a different view of the world and a different view of yourself, doing the phase that people call ego dissolution, where you melt up and you see the world in a different place and you see yourself from the outside. There's also a tendency that people who have the biggest ego dissolution or have the biggest egos before have an ego dissolution, and it actually comes back and have an even bigger ego afterwards. So it's not only that you become mellow and in touch with the world, but that is also how you view and your following session, I think. So the following days, how you integrate the experience has a lot to do with where you end up and where you want to go.
But so let's divide it. There's like a hero dose or a big dose, and then there's microdosing. Mm-hmm. So if we start with like the bigger doses, what does it mean, like a hero dose or a therapeutic dose? Like, you do research on mental health. So
therapeutic dose is a dose where you get psychedelic experiences. Hero dose, as they call it, is a much higher dose. Okay. I wouldn't recommend that. It has, as long as you go up in doses, it only increases anxiety feelings, and so a lot of those the bad things increases without the benefits increasing as much.
What are some of the risks, mental health-wise?
It's been used to, I mean, if you have a psychosis lying in your background, it can definitely induce a psychosis state. And it's been seen in, they have done twin studies in the US where they have looked at twins that have psychosis in their family, and looked at where one twin has taken psychedelics and the other one has not, and there is a higher risk of inducing this psychosis. Okay. Not that it induces psychosis in normal people or people who doesn't have a risk, but if you have a risk, and it's hard to know if you have a risk, because like your grandparents and nobody really knows if they have a psychosis or not, because that wasn't, the mental health system wasn't built up to control it that way. But the benefits of it is more towards, so we have this mental health depression and treatment-resistant depression, that it seems to be a very effective antidepressant drug, working in a few days in a lot of people. Not all people though, but similar to antidepressants or ketamine, also works in big group of the people, but not everybody.
What are we, like 80%, 60%?
I think, between 60 and 70% of the people who are in the groups respond, and then they have like a 30-40% who doesn't respond completely.
That's where it's guided, where there's a psychologist or a therapist sitting, you're doing it, and you're kind of experiencing, you're talking through it. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, you have a high dose in a clinical setting or a therapeutic setting, and then the following days you have conversations with a psychologist or therapist about integrating your experience.
Okay, so that's where it goes in again. You said there might be a week or longer where the brain is more plastic. Yes. So that's where you want to make sure that we guide it the right direction.
Yeah, usually with the psychedelics, you don't have the therapy session during the psychedelic experience, because you have a psychedelic experience, and this might be problematic to steer your brain into having the memories of trauma or something like that during that event. So you would usually speak about it in the days after.
Okay, so what about what I've heard is often that it's good to have a guide if you go, but that's also out of a therapeutic. Well, some people call it therapy, but it's not like the approved therapy.
It's definitely good to have somebody with you who knows to talk about how your mind works. It doesn't have to be a guide. It can also be a therapist or whoever, but somebody who can take care of you and guide you in the right direction if you're starting to feeling something that are unpleasant.
Okay.
Because it's very easy to go into a dark hole, but it's also relatively easy to move away from it and go into a lighter place and being in that place.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go down the rabbit hole.
Okay.
And they can help you with that.
Yeah, I mean, and for the therapy, I'm a complete no. 5 grams of something, like what kind of doses do we give and what kind of psychedelics do we use for therapy?
So in Denmark, we don't do anything because it's illegal.
Yeah.
But Germany just legalized it for treatment of treatment-resistant depression. And it's going to be implemented in Germany soon. And there you do psilocybin or mushroom extracts, actually. So it's the extract of the magic mushroom that are put in capsules, and then that's what you take in the therapy session.
And how certain are we that we get the right dose?
Because in those places, it's a medical company that produces the compound. So it is the exact dose. It's made like medicine. It is 25 milligrams of psilocybin content in the container.
Okay. Nice.
That is roughly 2.5 to 3 grams of mushrooms wet weight.
Okay.
It depends. Mushrooms are very different because they can have from 1 to 3% content of psilocybin, and then they can have like from different amounts of water compared to where they grow or if you watered them. So it's very different with mushrooms that you, for example, have grown yourself. It's really, really hard to know how much they actually contain. That's the biggest problem with that. But in the therapeutic session and in treatment of mental health, it would be a medical company that provides, and then we exactly know how much there is.
Yeah.
And the standard dose is 25 milligrams, 20 to 25 milligrams of psilocybin per person.
Yeah. And what about LSD?
LSD is much less. I think they use... It's also made from a medical company if you use it in therapy, and it's about 100 micrograms of LSD.
Okay. And ketamine as well is...
I don't know how much actually you get from ketamine. In Denmark, you would have the nasal spray of...
from Johnson & Johnson?
I can't remember the company.
I interviewed a emeritus professor about psychedelics and ketamine, and he said that it was extremely effective, but it was very hard because there was no patents on it any longer because it was generic, so no one really had the interest in doing the research. But Johnson & Johnson had made a nose spray, so they could patent that because it was a new delivery mechanism. So that was being pushed a bit more. Yeah,
that is probably the one that is legal in Denmark then. So
makes sense. Okay, extremely fascinating. A million follow-up questions about. So let's go back to the microdose or hero dose.
Yeah.
But so if I understand it correct, because there you don't really know how much you're getting. If you take it,
I think you know how.
Fairly accurate.
A hero dose is not used in therapeutic sessions and in treatment of patients at all. It's something that comes out of the recreational settings or underground therapy.
Yeah.
That they want to give you a hero dose for God knows what. But what happens is that while if positive effects may increase, they don't increase as much as the negative effects. So with a hero dose, you will have much more anxiety, risk of anxiety. You will have much more risk of unpleasant feelings or troublesome experiences than you would with a lower dose. And the positive effects we can't see any difference between those two things in the outcome of treatment of mental health. So
Interesting. So kind of put it another way, what you're saying, if I hear correct, I've looked into mobility training. If you want to be more mobile, if you do 5 minutes for a muscle group a week, that's where you get like 80%, 90% of the benefits. If you do up to 10, you get kind of a little bit more. And if you do more than 10 minutes, the additional benefits from mobility is very, very small.
Yes.
The caveat here, though, is the risk of bad things with psychedelics is much higher, where with mobility, it's not like a higher risk that you will get injured and so on.
But you probably will get injured more if you do more mobility training, right? If you push yourself to the limit, there would also be like
a higher risk
of hurting your knee or whatever.
Yeah. What will it take before psychedelics becomes legal and kind of accepted in society?
I mean, it's already getting legalized many places. So if we just take the US, Colorado and Oregon are legalizing it in some ways, 2 different ways though. But it is moving in the same direction as marijuana or pot is moving in the US, and more states are talking about legalizing the plant versions of psychedelics, like mushrooms and cactus. There's also many churches in the US that have the peyote rituals. So the indigenous population are doing those kinds of rituals. And then if you go to Europe, you will see places like Germany just approved a law where they approve psilocybin use for compassionate treatment of major depressive disorder. And the Czech Republic also approved mushrooms for treatment of mental health. Holland has a program where it's legalized more or less for recreational use, and Portugal and Switzerland also have like more or less legalized systems. Yep. Swiss is also compassionate use, and Israel also has a compassionate use legalization.
So a lot is happening these years.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I couldn't go on summer vacation and then another country comes up and we legalized it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the questions I got when I asked out was from a person that never actually had alcohol or anything else. He was like, ask him, what should Mads Friis and I take to go to the moon and back legally?
You should be friends with, what is the guy that has the rocket company? Then you could go to
Elon
the
Musk.
moon.
Fair. What in California is it? I've no friends that take eat chocolate and microdose with that. Is that legally, or because I understand like they're getting it like with the full packaging and so on, almost like from a shop?
Yeah, it's not legal in California.
Okay.
It's legal it's decriminalized in Oregon.
Okay.
And in Colorado, and then in Oakland, next to San Francisco, they localized in Oakland. They also decriminalized it, so you can actually buy it in Oakland. You can't buy it in San Francisco.
Okay.
In mushroom forms or whatever.
So that's where you can get those small chocolate bars with microdosing.
I haven't seen those, but I guess so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you think it will have to happen for that to become legal? If you compare it to, if we start another place, I've been told I grew up learning to drink alcohol. Mm-hmm. And I've also heard that alcohol is one of the most damaging substances you can take, but that's legal. Yeah. How does, let's say, a microdose or maximum therapeutic dose compare to the damaging effects of alcohol?
It's probably much less, but that to say we don't know all of the side effects of taking microdoses all the time. So we wouldn't know. We would know about alcohol. It's not good for you in any way, other than it can be socializing and you can have a better social life, maybe with a good amount of like a healthy relationship, right? Then you can.
But I find it interesting. Alcohol is the only drug you have to come with excuses not to use.
At least in Denmark, yeah. Yes.
And it seems that is, at least from what I've read, and I mean, it's worse than, for example, mushrooms, which you would have to justify a lot more, and people would look at you like, "What are you doing?"
I talk with people who are taking it for mental health reasons, and they have been taking, "Are you taking drugs?" Or asked, "Are you taking drugs?" And I guess anything is a drug, so I would say, yeah, it's medicine for some. Yeah. But then if you do it for self improvement, or maybe you do it, to become a better dad or better at your work or whatever, then it's more healthy people doing it, right? Yeah. So there's a difference between healthy people taking drugs and wanting to improve, and then using a substance to treat mental health disorders. There's a big difference, I think. So if we want to treat mental health disorders, we also need to, we must be 110% sure that we don't create a worse outcome for the person with mental health disorders, right?
Yeah. But I find that very interesting because psychologists is kind of like the gold standard, and I think psychologists can be amazing. But there's also psychologists that creates much bigger problems in the subjects.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's not 100% safe either. So when we look up the different things, in my coaching practice as well, where I had people that's been to psychology, I always say I'm not a psychologist, so I don't work on that part. But I've had cases where I was like, damn, that psychologist, someone should like take them out of business the way they've just created bigger traumas in your life about your parents and stuff like that, and like kept drilling it and just like got paid week after week to make that connection stronger and stronger, right?
Yes.
Again, there's amazing psychologists, but that's not 100% safe either.
No. I mean, the mind, it can change in both ways, also with conversations with psychologists, right?
Yeah.
So, but just saying that we need to be careful if we treat mental health problems.
Of course.
And if we have a natural compound like mushrooms, I don't see a problem in saying this should be legal, and in a way maybe like tobacco is legal, and you can go and buy it and then you do what you want to do. I don't have a problem with people doing it recreatively or in that way.
What do we know about the long-term effects of microdosing?
Not a lot, actually. I just read a new review recently, and there was the biggest. There's both. They reviewed all the studies from recent years, and most of them have been uncontrolled. People know what they're taking, and they self-report whatever they are feeling. But the most benefits were on the social side, so social connections. And then there was there's also a lot of negative effects, mental health problems, problems with it not being legal, and a lot of side effects as well, actually. In my research, we have looked at is in rats, and we of course can't ask them about their mental health state, but it seems like these rats are less prone to stress, so they're more resilient to stress. And if you want to look into, I mean, most of the mental health problems are some kind of originated from a stress, or at least they're getting worse if you are stressed. So it makes sense that if it's lowering your stress, then you also have less of any kind of mental health problems, and maybe you are better to interact with other people if you are less prone to stress, or maybe you're less social anxiety. Then it also helps with your social life and stuff like that. And if it then on top of that induces some kind of plasticity, and you have set a goal to what you want to be at, and it helps induce this change, then of course it can be beneficial. Yeah. But we don't know yet. But at least
it's also very hard to do that research, as you said, like if it's illegal, and then you have to get the self-report. It's the same with steroids, testosterone and so on, and growth hormone, because we don't have it in a controlled manner. I know there's a study at, I think actually your university as well, with steroid use, where they've gotten people that can come in then and get tested a lot more, and they kind of explain about what they've been doing and so on, so we can understand it better. Mm-hmm. But that makes sense. It's super hard to do this. So you need to get the self-reported, and then also the cohort you get in is also much harder to control, because who can you actually like attract into that? And some of the outliers that you would love to have actually had the data on, they are now like so far where you cannot get ahead of them.
There's many points from this. If you look into like getting people to do it and then doing science on it, that's always hard to control, because it's a naturalistic setting. People are doing what they want. You can't control them in a good way. Some will drink alcohol, some will not, some will exercise, some will not. You will have a big diverse group of people. What we want to do is do clinical research, and then we want to control everything about your life for the next 6 weeks. Yes. Don't drink more than one drink a day. Don't exercise like a crazy before you come in for testings, and everything needs are put in a box, and it needs to be like this, because we want to have a perfect group of people that we can then. The only difference between these two groups are the drug that we give you, or something like that. So that's how most clinical science is done when it's done like in a clinical setting. But you can also do the other studies, but then you need a lot more people because you will have a lot more variance in the study group.
If you put it kind of in boxes, I know you are at university, so there's different things what you're allowed to say and what you can say, also because things has like what evidence. But we have the people that have major depression, potentially suicidal. There we're starting to see promising effect if done in the proper way. Mm-hmm. Then we have the people that are trying to optimize for performance or something else that might be low on stress and microdosing. We have a group in between that might have had some issues and they're trying like recreational, or like they want this as a way of trying to fix some stuff. Like where are we, like the different boxes of people where like there's different dangers and potential benefits? Does it make sense? I know it's a big question, but kind of understanding, because a different risk level, as you say, whether you have issues in the family. There's a big issues on whether you're super happy. So I've been very afraid of trying something like this, because the thing I'm most grateful about is my mindset. I'm a super happy camper. So I'm like, I definitely see there's a big upside, but I am more afraid of how big can that upside be compared to my potential downside of changing that I'm naturally. But I also know people that are, their default is just more negative and seeing a little bit more dark on life and so on. And I understand for some of them, that upside seems much bigger of potentially becoming a little bit more happy, a little bit more joyful.
I think if you are in a good place in your life, like I am in a good place in my life and I'm happy and I don't... I also have a positive mindset about the future, and I don't fear new third world war or something coming up. Then I don't see any reason for me to actually take a psychedelic substance, or for you in that matter. You seem like a really happy person and you have a positive mindset, then I don't see the...
But then I'm also curious to see, like,
that's
is
another
there another like level of life, and is there something that I have suppressed for years that I'm not aware of? Like I know stuff from that's been challenging and so on. Is there something there that I think I've let go of?
That is the biggest issue with it, right? Because there's actually a lot of people who go out and then afterwards, after they had the psychedelic experience, something will arise that is maybe true, but also maybe not true, because it is the same way as dreams, for example. In your psychedelic experience, something can come up, and that can also be an untrue memory about a trauma that you think you may have had, but you actually didn't have.
Yeah.
And then you have to deal with that afterwards.
Yeah, and the doubt, was it true? Was it not true?
Yes. Like if you sleep and you are dreaming that your wife or spouse cheated on you, right? And then you wake up and then you're like, but you cheated on me during my dream, and the other person is like, yeah, but I didn't. I was
but
sleeping.
There's still the emotion sitting in the body after a dream that can take a while to shake off.
And that can also come up during a psychedelic experience.
And that's where the hero dose is much more likely that you would have that than if you have more of a therapeutic dose, or if you have more of like a smaller microdose.
Yeah, microdose, you won't have any psychedelic experiences.
Then you'll just feel more light.
It would be like having a beer Friday afternoon when you're done working and then relaxing.
Yeah. So that's also what I hear some people being like, it's much better to just microdose than drinking 3 to 5 beers in the afternoon. So a small dose, it makes you that kind of lighted. Would you agree on that?
I wouldn't compare them. I don't think you can compare.
Okay. So the experience is too different.
Not the experience, but I'm always thinking about side effects. And I don't know if a microdose in the afternoon is better or worse than having a beer. It will definitely be better than having 10 beers. But having one beer, or having one microdose of psilocybin, I have no idea.
No. Okay, fair. But so if you look at those boxes, like
if you do them early enough in the day so you sleep well, then it's probably fine. But both of them can create problems with sleep. So if you take them, like if you have half a bottle of red wine for dinner, you know you are destroying your sleep, right? And the same thing would happen if you took a microdose in the evening. It would also be not good for your sleep.
Okay. So if you put those categories again, how would you categorize the ones where like the risks are so high? And again, I know this is very hard before you've done like the 1,000 studies to really
I think
see.
for healthy people, the risk for one trip is really low. As long as you do it in a safe setting.
Okay.
Whatever you do on, like, it's not the drug that are creating the risk, right? You've probably heard from the stories about people jumping out a window because they thought they could fly and stuff like that. If you make sure that won't happen, then the risks are really low.
Okay.
But don't go play in traffic or...
No. But that's also why it's important to have a guide or someone to look after you.
At least have somebody that are not tripping next to you that can take care of you.
So if I hear someone saying like, yeah, I'm just going to go in a summer house, I'll be by myself, I'll take some kind of dose. That's when I should tell them like, I talked to a really smart guy. That's a really bad idea. It's potentially not a bad idea that you try a dose, but you really need to have someone looking after you.
I would say yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yes.
We could talk for hours, Michael. There's also what's some of the most interesting research you're sitting on right now, or somewhere you're like, this is fantastic research. And what research would you love to be able to do if you have unlimited amount of resources?
Oh, I need more resources. So if somebody is hearing this and want to contribute to psychedelic research, they should definitely reach out.
Yeah.
But some of the most interesting things is that we just installed a brain scanner. So I don't know if you know what an MRI scanner is for humans, and a PET scanner. And we just installed this version in a miniaturized version for rodents, and we can then do brain imaging in the same way as we do in humans, but now we can do it in rodents. And I know animal research is not super popular, but there is things that we can do with rodents that we wouldn't be able to do with people. That makes us go further in understanding how these drugs works and how mental health in general is working. So I'm super excited about getting to use this machine a lot more. And then maybe not too popular for your show, but we're also trying to lower the risks of psychedelic experiences so that we can get out into the mental health treatment realm, and that includes trying to remove as much of the psychedelic experience as possible from some of these treatments. Because if we could treat people with schizophrenia with a psychedelic and get them to be better and maybe have a better life, then that would be a really big improvement of their life quality, for sure.
I found a lot of high performers deal with anxiety. So that's kind of been sometimes pushing them, but also some of them have anxiety attacks and so on. I've been surprised the more that I've gotten close to like working with people that are performing really well and so on. So is that also an area where we potentially be able to remove the psychedelic experience, but give them something that would...
Yes, because if you don't know what you're getting into and you don't have any experience, it is anxious. It is creating anxiety.
Yeah.
You will get increased heart rate, and just increased heart rate will also give you a slightly feeling of anxiety. You will get changes in how you sense the world. Everything about this will induce anxiety. So if you're prone to anxiety before that, it will also be inducing anxiety. So if we can remove the psychedelic experience and maybe some of the feelings in your body, then you will also get less anxious. And maybe we can then treat the anxiety afterwards by therapy in a quicker way. That could be done with drugs that are not inducing this psychedelic experience in the same way. And we are trying to figure out what drugs could this be then.
Okay, so what's some of the research that you're doing today?
Yeah, but this is with some of these drugs and trying to treat anxiety. So we have
And then you induce something in a rat. You scan their brain at the same time to kind of see, or how does it like?
Exactly, that's what we do. We have a rat, and we can induce anxiety in a transient way. So they have a state of anxiety for 3 to 4 hours, and then we can try and treat it. And then we can see if there's differences between the state of anxiety and then the state of anxiety with and without treatment. Okay. And then we can try and figure out if we can find drugs that are working very well to reduce anxiety.
Cool. And that's with the brain scans, or you also measure the heart rate, or like how do we?
We do brain scans. We measure heart rate, but not so much in rat. They have a really fast heartbeat, 120 beats per minute, I think. So it's super fast. But we do a lot of behavioral as well. So we have some avoidance behaviors where they can either get a treat or they get the option to get a treat, but it's also not, they have to go through an unpleasant experience to get the treat, and then they of course avoid it. Kind of like in an anxious situation. If you have social anxiety and you want to go to a social event, you know that it will be beneficial to go to a social event, but you also don't want to go because it's a social event, right? So you have this avoidance part. So we test that in the rats, and then we test the general levels of anxiety in moving around in daily life.
Okay. Yeah. Who are the people that fund this kind of research? Like the psychedelic research?
Yeah, right now I have... so the scanner that we just bought was from the Novo Nordisk Foundation.
Yeah.
They paid a lot of money to...
How much does a scanner like that cost?
14 million.
Okay, so
Danish.
that's not a small check for like a private individual that wants to support the research.
No, probably not. But then we also do all the other research studies, and they're funded by some of them by excess money from studies that I do for companies. Yeah. So sometimes I do paid research. Companies will pay me to test this drug in some kind of model, and then I get like an overhead on top of that, and that money can then fund my own research.
Yeah.
And then Lundbeck Foundation and the Danish, the Danske Frie Forskningsråd, the Danish Research Foundation also provides funding for our research. So there's a lot of foundations in Denmark. With this foundation ecosystem that we have in Denmark is actually very good for funding research. The Novo Nordisk Foundation being the world's largest foundation.
I once heard a number, I don't know if it's true, but the Novo Nordisk Foundation was responsible for 80% of all the research in Denmark for like the grants, because it's so big.
That could be true, yeah.
So both a fantastic thing and a really bad thing in regards to what can we actually research and say, but like fantastic that a small country like Denmark get a lot of research grants because we have Novo Nordisk in Denmark.
Yes. Well, but just remember that the Novo Nordisk Foundation and Novo Nordisk are separate from each other. So the foundation they have their own, and they don't tell us what to research on. They but they do pick
what
they want to provide funding for.
Yeah. I think it's always a hard discussion about where does the money come from and not, but there's also need to be some kind of incentives. And then the question is, how much are we willing to pay more in tax otherwise to get all that research done? So it is just kind of the bias as well sometimes.
I guess if you say it the hard way, the fat Americans are paying the research in Denmark through Novo Nordisk Foundation.
Yeah, that is true.
So
something about someone that never done mushrooms or anything else. How long do these experiences last? So one thing is how long the window is open, but is it like 20 minutes, an hour, 3 hours, 6 hours? Like how does...
a high dose of mushrooms is intense for at least 3 hours, and then there's a long after window where you also have some experiences, but not psychedelic, and it can last for 6 hours in total.
Okay.
I think. LSD is different. It's 12 hours. So
a bit longer.
Much longer.
And it's like alcohol where you just can continue to take a beer more and then you continue being drunk, or it's
actually not. Yeah. Okay. If you take a trip on Monday and then do a second one on Tuesday, it will be much less intense because brain receptor levels will change immediately after this. So you will actually not feel the same the day after. It won't induce the same effect. And that's also why people they don't want to do it. You usually don't want to do it repeatedly because you're not getting the same from it if you do it repeatedly.
So you cannot do a full Roskilde Festival on mushrooms. You're like you could do with alcohol, where you're like drunk for 7 days, which is fantastic for the body.
You wouldn't feel anything about it by the end. I think so. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's also one of the things that's kind of more of a safety thing, that it's less likely that people overdose, you could say, the way that they do with alcohol, because you can just continue to be on the...
Yeah, I don't think anybody has actually overdosed on mushrooms ever. There's a huge safety window up to the lethal dose.
Okay. What would the dream research, like if you had unlimited amount of money. Someone listened to this podcast, like sitting at Novo Nordisk Foundation, thinking like, okay, we need more research on that. What would be the dream research project to do?
Right now, it's understanding anxiety. So I really want to understand it more. There was a recent paper last year, because there's really a lot of Danish people who have anxiety who are not in the system undiagnosed, and they showed that at least over the course of lifetime, 60% of the Danish population will at some point get anxiety medication prescribed. So that is more than cancer and more than heart diseases, right? So I think anxiety is really becoming a global epidemic, and we need to understand it more. And I really want to understand why you get anxiety and how we can treat it.
I think I saw an article from you in videnskab.dk. Can that be true?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That you wrote about anxiety as well.
Yes.
I think that could be several episodes as well, just going deep into what happens in the brain. Why does it happen? What are all the things around, from your sleep to your diet to social connections?
But another thing that I really care a lot about is going out and talking to people. That's also why I talk to you, right? And I think if you learn about anxiety and you learn about what can you do about anxiety and why is it coming up, then you can also do something about it. So I really want to go out and talk with younger people, especially like teenagers, about anxiety, teaching them about it and telling them what can you actually do.
Yeah. What are the top 5 things you can do before we end here?
The top 5 things to treat anxiety. The first thing is to recognize it. So know when you're feeling anxiety and that it's completely natural. It's okay. And then know how you can lower it with breathing. And I'm sure you can tell them more about lowering anxiety with breathing. And then you can also have a positive mindset about it. So one of the things you can do is you tell your kid when is the last, if he is afraid of sleeping and there's a monster under the bed, you can use your mind to tell yourself, okay, there's no monsters and they're probably not hiding under the bed because they're bigger than they can't fit under the bed. So reason, use your brain to create reason about the anxiety, and then that will also help. But I think the top is recognizing when it's anxiety, and then be aware about it, and then over time you will be able to feel less and less anxious when you go and do something because you know what you're expecting to do.
Yeah.
If it's an exam situation, for example, maybe think the whole process through before you go into it, because if you have thought the process through of what's going to happen, then it will also be less anxious.
Yeah.
Social anxiety, for example, if you are going to go to the supermarket and buy something and you feel anxious about it, think the process through. What's going to happen? I'm going to pick up the cauliflower, I'm going to go to the queue, I'm going to pay, and then I'm going to go home.
Yeah.
And then think the process through and remember to breathe and lower your heart rate. Then over time you will be all right, I think.
Fantastic. Michael, there's a ton of questions more I want to ask you, but
I'll be back in a year or something like that.
That would be amazing. Also going deep in anxiety. It's as you're saying, so many people are dealing with it.
Yes.
And it's something many people don't share, that they're suffering with silently and alone.
Yes, just speaking about anxiety is going to help, right? So
Yeah.
if I go out and speak about anxiety, then people will be more open about it.
Yeah. And there's so many things you can do. I read the protocol for how to treat anxiety in Denmark that are given to the psychologist. And it's amazing, like from exposure therapy, and also you actually do hyperventilation with a psychologist as part of it. At least the last time I checked the protocol. So see this well with breathwork. Some people try and do hyperventilation. I always give the disclaimer before.
That will induce anxiety.
Yeah. So telling them, like, if you have the friend of anxiety, as many people do, be aware when we do the hyperventilation that can kind of trigger and might do it less. But I actually have experienced that some people are getting more comfortable with the hyperventilation because they now understand that it's in a safe space. But I always tell them, if you have it, don't go all in, because
that's
I'm not alone with you. So like if it was 1-to-1, like if you're sitting with someone, it's different. But if there's too many, like I also don't do that kind of breathwork with too many people, because I need to be able to pick someone up if something happens.
That's the thing, about learning to know when it's anxiety. Because if you do hyperventilation and you feel it, then you feel it's anxiety, but it's not anxiety, right? It's just your heart rate that goes up. but you learn to control it, and it's the exact same physiological phenomenon that goes on when you have anxiety. If you can learn to control it, you can also control your anxiety. Yeah. And the same thing with cold water, for example, immersion. If you go down, it's not a pleasant feeling, and you will get like the anxiety feeling in the beginning. But if you can then learn and control that, then you will also be able to better control your anxiety in real life or in other places.
Michael, I would love to have you back at some point. Might have to be anxiety, even though I think psychedelics and the brain scans are so fascinating. But this is an important topic. Thank you so much.
Let's talk about anxiety next time.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.